Hi.
Hi, Srini. How are you doing?
Very good.
Since Pradyumna introduced Srini to me, I will not ask him if he knows him.
Good one.
That was Hyderabad, I think, Naushad, no?
In Hyderabad, at the Design Summit in Hyderabad, exactly. Yeah.
How is the COVID in your part of the world?
You're asking me, Srini? Well, it depends on, so Pune seems to be stable, but still a stressed health system. Other parts of the country, I think, we're seeing improvements in Gujarat, at least if you go by the official number. Delhi has shown a drop in numbers, but from everything that I've heard from people, the health system is still terribly stressed, overstressed, I would say.
Right.
And then Tamil Nadu, West Bengal still showing big increases.
Oh, Chennai
Beyond
is
Delhi.
terrible. Chennai is terrible. At least I've lost 10 people in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Relatives and very close uncles and all. So it's been terrible actually. Chennai is really, from whatever I know. I mean, when you get hit in your own circle, then you feel it.
Very much so. Very much so.
Srini, sorry to interrupt. I think the video streaming is on now. So Pooja, just give the latest information. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are live now, and we will be starting the session in next 2 minutes with all of your permissions.
I know there's a way of.
Pooja, participants started joining?
Yes, participants have started joining. Yeah. Yeah, so we are at exact 5. Dr. Ashish, with your permission, may I start the session?
Dr. Forbes, shall we start, please?
All set, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So good evening to all the participants and to all the dignitaries joined here for the first session of the Design Talk series. Dr. Naushad Forbes, past President CII, Co-Chairman Forbes Marshall, Mr. Srini Srinivasan, World Design Organization's President, Professor Manisha Phadke, Director, NMIMS School of Design, Professor Pradyumna Vyas, Senior Advisor CII, and fellow leaders from CII. I would like to welcome you all for the first session of the Design Talk series organized by CII in collaboration with World Design Organization and supported by NMIMS School of Design. This initiative has been planned to sensitize the Indian stakeholders the benefits of investing in design and to follow good design practices. Global stalwarts from different parts of the world will be invited to share their journey and experiences with Indian audience to learn and gain insights from. Good evening. This is Pooja Sanchla from CII. I would like to just mention that CII from last 2 decades has been honestly pursuing the strategy for promoting and leveraging designed towards accelerating economic growth. CII has diligently worked to bolster and support the economy and society by demonstrating the vital role of design in making businesses more competitive and public services more effective. We are also pleased to have World Design Organization's partnership for the initiative. WDO is an organization with global footprint advocating, promoting, and sharing knowledge of industrial design-driven innovation that has the power to create a better world. Our supporting partner, NMIMS School of Design, is one of the multidisciplinary school of Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai. The nucleus of the school is to impart future scope design education to prime the student to be design professionals in emerging scenarios. With this, I would like to now introduce Mr. Srini Srinivasan, President, World Design Organization. Mr. Srinivasan is the highly accomplished designer and entrepreneur in creative design and technology development with over 25 years of work experience in Silicon Valley, USA, and India. May I now request Mr. Srini Srinivasan to give his welcome address. Mr. Srinivasan, over to you.
Thank you, Pooja. Dear Pradyumna, dear Ashish, dear Dr. Forbes, and also Ms. Manisha, and all the other CII leaders. It's indeed my pleasure to be there as part of the inaugural design talk series organized by CII. Also, good afternoon to everybody who's been on this particular event. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of WDO, where we've been partnering with our member CII, and I congratulate CII for hosting this event, starting of this particular series, which is quite significant in the Indian context as well as in the global design context. As we all know, CII has been involved in promoting design with the industry and connecting them to the global design community for several years, 20 plus years. And this particular event is certainly another feather in their cap. Design Talks is something that they envisioned among the other many events that they have come up with. As Pooja mentioned, WDO is a global community that promotes industrial design and also a spirit of open collaboration to advance and facilitate innovative design-led solutions. A voice for the industrial design for over 60 years, our network is comprised of multiple stakeholders from the academia, professional, promotional institutions, as well as the private and public sectors from across 40 countries in all regions of the world. We have been exploring this unique status and working with various stakeholders on the issues that are mattering to us at a global level. WDO also adopted in 2017 the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals and are working with the global communities and cities to promote sustainability, and all our programs revolve around these goals. In particular, the WDO's program called the World Design Talks is a program that involves a local community and a chosen topic among the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. It's a 1 or 2 day event where the key speakers talk and share their experience and knowledge in that particular subject, and then followed by a workshop where we discuss, ideate, and prototype a possible solution to the design challenge. So in this context, we are very, very happy to see that just not only once, but you're also having many design talk series. Series means, you'll have more, I hope. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that CII has been very active, especially in the last 2 years, with much more design events focused on bringing global community. I mean, you've been doing a lot of stuff in the Indian context, but now you're becoming more global, and we are very proud to partner with CII. And I'm also very eagerly looking forward to today's lively discussion between Dr. Forbes and Ms. Manisha. Thank you, and all the best for this event and subsequent events.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan. Thank you for your kind words and also appreciating the work done at CII. Of course, it wouldn't have been possible with your support and the support from the global partners. May I now take the privilege to introduce Dr. Naushad Forbes, the co-chairman of Forbes Marshall and the past president CII. He's been the co-chairman of India's leading steam engineering and control instrument company. Dr. Forbes is an active votary of energy conservation industry. He serves as an independent director on the boards of several companies and educational institute. I would also like to introduce at this stage Professor Manisha Phadke, an alumnus of Industrial Design Center of IIT Bombay, having a professional career spanning for 30 years, demonstrating a constant endeavor to imbibe and reskill to future-driven design frontiers. She's founded in 2017 a transdisciplinary School of Design at NMIMS. Now I would like to invite Professor Manisha Phadke to initiate the conversation with Dr. Forbes. Over to you, Professor Phadke. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Welcome again to Dr. Forbes, Mr. Pradyumna, Mr. Srini, and the dignitaries other present here. And a warm welcome to all of you who are watching us in the given times. I hope you're doing well and you're taking care and working towards the behavior change that we need to fight this battle with us. With that said, I think it's of personal interest to me as well to talk to Dr. Forbes because design rides on many shoulders, and he has been a proponent of design for many years now. In his address in the India Design Summit of 2018, he detailed some salient points from the book that we all swear by, Good Products and Bad Products by James Adams. With that said, Dr. Forbes, what's your definition of design, especially from your point of view?
Thanks, Manisha, and thank you all for organizing this program. I love participating in programs on design, but I especially like participating in them when they're organized by CII, which is an institution that I have the greatest regard and respect for, and which has done so much, I think, as the country's leading development institution. The definition of design that I like to use is that design is a deliberate conceptualization to achieve certain desired ends. So there's deliberate, meaning it requires a systematic and conscious activity. There's an objective in mind. One is trying to meet a set of human needs through whatever it is that one is designing. And it could be a product, a consumer product, it could be an industrial product, it could be a service, it could be an interface between a consumer and an app, for example. All of that is a part of how we engage with the world of stuff, the world of products and services. You mentioned in your initial comments Jim Adams, and I got interested in design thanks to Jim Adams. Many years ago, when I was actually a sophomore, so when I was a second-year student in college, and I took a course from him. Actually, at that time, not in design. It was actually in organization theory, but over the years, I became a close friend of his. He was my PhD advisor. And he was one of the founders, as you know, of the Stanford Design Program.
Yes.
As we would talk about design, we started thinking about how design could contribute to Indian industry. And so many years ago now, 20 years ago, we organized a program which ran for a year with 5 Indian companies, Godrej Industries, Godrej and Boyce, Tata Motors, and Forbes Marshall. And I'm missing one. And actually another Godrej joint venture. And we worked for a year on actually a course called Integrated Design for Manufacturing and Marketability. It was quite a mouthful. And this course was meant to actually apply design principles to what we were doing in industry as we developed products. And it actually ended up being a very engaging, successful course. We would bring faculty in from Stanford every 2 months or so. We had an experienced product designer who lived in India for a year and worked with each of these companies 1 day a week. And we all learned a huge amount as a result. So, my introduction to design and my appreciation of design, I owe very much to Jim and what I've learned from him and the book that you mentioned, Good Products, Bad Products.
I think we have him to thank for, because the advocacy of design that you have done over the years, including this Stanford program, and bringing in design at places that like industrial engineering has not really looked at the softer aspects of design that popularly is known as design. And I thank you for that, and thank you to James for that. But if we step a little further, I also remember in one of your conversations that you elucidated that a design of the product can make you feel. So it's not about aesthetics, it's not about functionality, but it's also about how you feel. And now with the technology that we are living in, like you said, the app connects to a wearable, which is connected technology, which is IoT, and we have alternate realities. It's all boiling down to perception, understanding, feeling, and then action, right? Especially in this experience economy, where the thrust is a lot from the technology aspect. So I'd like to know your views on this point. Like we've understood what you feel in another conversation about products and hardcore touch and feel tangible solutions. What is your feeling, or what are your views on humanizing this technology? So where I'm coming from is, I remember my CPROM days. Okay, and cut to today, I'm just talking to Alexa and things get done. So I just want to see what's your view. And
sure. So, the Jim's book, this Good Products, Bad Products book, each chapter takes you through an aspect of design. And the aspects of design that he's talking about, I think there are 7 aspects he talks about. Only one of them is function. Only one of them is actually is specifications. That what does the product actually do? Yeah? The rest of it are actually emotional responses that the product triggers in the user. And so, for example, how does the product appeal to the emotions? Very directly. What does it symbolize? How ergonomic is it, such that it's comfortable to actually use and interact with? Does it appeal to our principles of sustainability, for example, so that we feel that we're doing something that's good for the planet while we consume the product? What does the product convey in terms of craftsmanship? Now, most of the products that we use in our world today are mass manufactured products, but we still try to convey some of these softer pieces. So we, for example, it's the classic example is, why do the most modern cars like to use leather and wood in them, especially if they are luxury cars, because they're somehow meant to convey craftsmanship. It's meant to convey something that goes beyond just what the product does. I would argue too that this is not new. This is something that's been around for many, many years. The arts and crafts movement, it was called the arts and crafts movement, and I think any designer learns about the arts and crafts movement of the late 19th century. The arts and crafts movement was actually meant to bring a sense of craft to mass manufacturing. It was meant to actually combine mass manufacturing and high and sort of standardized products with aesthetics, with elements of design, this applied to furniture, this applied to furnishings, this applied to wallpaper, it applied to a variety of different things that we used in our daily lives. So I think actually worrying about design in a holistic sense, in an emotional sense, is very important. I'll end with one more comment, which is that, if you look at the world of cars again, right? Most people would argue that the Japanese really moved the quality scale way up. A Toyota, for example, would probably be considered the world's highest quality car in traditional quality definitions. Yeah, in terms of zero defects, in terms of it really nothing going wrong with it for years and years and years, and so on and so forth. But then the question is, why are people willing to pay 3 times as much for a Mercedes or a BMW or so on? And so it's somehow those cars are appealing to one's image of that goes well beyond a set of specifications and well beyond normal definitions of quality. And it's a huge premium that you gain as a result of being able to appeal to the emotions, appeal to something that's where your car is somehow symbolic of something more than what you're actually doing by driving it, and so on. So I think the power that products can have, well-designed products can have, as they appeal to emotions, is very important and very significant. It's important to the success of companies, and it's especially important to the success the products have in the market.
Yeah, I think that's interesting to hear, because now we have another segment that you talked about, which is sustainability, and how Tesla is coming into the foray, and we are playing a huge premium for that, right? And we have Prius, and we're doing that. I just read today that the technology, there is a connective technology that the engineers in the University of Wisconsin-Madison are working, and which actually is a flooring that they have designed, which is made of chemically treated cellulose nanofibers with wood pulp. And what does it do? It actually creates energy, electricity, as we walk. So there is a good mesh of what we call as what we defined as engineering products or industrial use into what we are looking at a broader aspects of design, which is sustainability or experience. I think that's a thought that I think everybody should inculcate at this time. I think that's where we want to go ahead. But bringing you to your other interests, like being from the engineering, yes, I know you did your you did have a good mentor in your initial years, but you also mentioned, and you were advocating also for a skewed ratio of demand and supply of design talent some time ago. You also was a firm believer saying that design culture is an essential part and it should be accepted. And maybe this program that you did with Stanford actually illustrates that. So what's your motivation behind associating with design and design community? You've served as the president of India Design Council. And in your opinion, what should be the motto going forward? And particularly from my point of view, or the designers who are here who are propagating design into the social fabric, right? When do you think we will have the sensibility that certain countries are already in the foray for? Where do you see all this going, and what's your motivation there?
So so there are lots of questions there. I'm going to try and pick up 3 from what you mentioned and address. So first, the reason I think design is so important to India is because it's the way in which I think as companies we can move up the scale of the value-added scale and make products that are more valued by consumers, by customers, by industrial users, whatever. Second, that we can make our society work better as a result of well-designed interfaces and products.
Yes.
Our public spaces that we see around us in the country could do with real design input. I'll give you one of my favorite examples. A few years back, we actually, the year I was president of CII, we made a trip to the Northeast, and we drove from Guwahati to Shillong, And as you drive along that road, you're driving along the most spectacular countryside. I mean, amongst the most spectacular countryside in the world. And the construction along the way is simply awful. You see building and construction everywhere, and it literally is a pockmark on wonderful countryside. And you look at that and you say, we need greater thought being given to how we fashion the environment in which we live, what we have to look at with our eyes. And if we look at this kind of ugliness, and ugliness that's marring something that is so beautiful, we can do much better. So how do we actually end up doing much better in the country? And I think it takes us back to what I believe should be the main objective, not only of the India Design Council, but of anyone concerned with design in India, which is scale and impact. How do we bring scale to design in the country? Because a lot of good things are happening with design in India, but is the average Indian's life better because of design? Until it is, we haven't had an adequate impact.
True.
So, we need to scale. That means we need many, many, many more designers. We need those designers to have much greater impact and effect on their organizations and on what they're working on. And design needs to be all around us in what we see. A last comment, which is that we have in our country the most amazing architectural traditions and the most amazing craft traditions. And this is an old theme of mine, which Pradyumna has heard often before. I believe that one of the biggest opportunities that we need to tap is bringing together our historical aesthetic and craft traditions with the world of modern manufacturing. They are today two distinct worlds. We have, in Ahmedabad, and Pradyumna's heard this also before, there are two of my favorite museums anywhere in the world. The museum that was set up by the Sarabhais, and the museum that's been set up more recently by the Lalbhais. The ones that's run by Gira Sarabhai, and then the one that's run now in Kastubhai Lalbhai's house. And they're both magnificent museums. The Calico Museum, the one in Gira Sarabhai's house, is a fabulous museum on fabric. And it really illustrates our craft traditions in textile, in the arts of textiles. I mean, it's one of the world's great museums. And I believe any designer should go through it, but I believe that every Indian should go through that museum too. Because it gives you an appreciation of the richness of our craft traditions, and it tells you how life can be so much better as a result of applying a sense of aesthetics and a sense of beauty to everything that we do. And I think actually that if we can somehow combine these craft traditions with the world of modern industry, we will truly start to impact the lives of the average Indian. And until we do, we haven't yet achieved what we need to for design in India.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there are 2 or 3 points that I like to take home. One is how does design influence in the company? So we've traditionally been people who work around ourselves with ourselves, but I think collaborative creativity now is the game that we have to work in, get more people around us, the team of engineers, team of business people to work with us, and bringing design in the way that their mindset is also built. So build a design mindset. That's one. Second, I feel that when we are looking at sustainability in a broader concept, the point that you made is of the textile. We often look at the tip of the iceberg. So we're looking at colors, we're looking at motifs, we're looking at the way they've all come together very beautifully, but underlying all this is actually the concept of sustainability that we've already built in Indian culture. I mean, the way we live, the way our fabric is completely 3 hours. And I think if we research into a little bit down on just how it's made, I think there might be a bit of conceptual knowledge that we can take to manufacturing, because it's not about just the surface level, but how it was, or how it's being made. I think that's one thing that we should all probably take from your conversation right now. And I think designers, to get the seat at the table, and they need the seat at the table to be able to voice what they're doing, and probably they need to extend themselves to being more T-shaped, so that we understand a bit of more of engineering and business and what's business value. I think if we take these three, in the next decade, we'll be able to make some more interventions in the fabric of society. And I think where we would come, and I'm personally very, very intrigued. Now, Forbes Marshall is a completely high industrial company, like steam engine business, right? And I listened to one of your talks where you said that you do not, you prefer to have your prototypes which I touch and feel. I like to talk to my product, right? Not see it and be shown. So with that said, in your line of business, I'm sure innovations play a large part. And it's not only about look, feel, and functionality. It's about efficiency. It's about product life cycle for you. It's about customer engagement and now retention, though it's a specialized industry. So can you give us some incidents where you've had to take certain decisions and they helped you because you have been a design influencer or a proponent of it? That would be interesting.
So our business, as you mentioned, is all industry products. Steam engineering, control, instrumentation. And
right.
A few years ago, we wanted to design a better boiler, and we actually spoke to a design institute in Pune and asked them, and we were sort of kind of brushed off by them in terms of saying, well, what we're doing is not for industrial products like boilers, So, and I remember being highly insulted by that response. Yeah, and we said, okay, so let us design the world's best boiler. And we said, let's relax all constraints. So no cost constraints, right? We may not be able to sell the thing because it's so expensive, but just design the world's best boiler. And it has to look like the world's best boiler when you see it. And it was a really nice project. It was a project that the designers and the not just the designers, I mean, the designers loved it, but so did the engineers working on it and the technical people working on it and so on, because they really went to town in terms of first saying, well, what would make for the world's best boiler, and then everything that flowed from it. And I found that to be quite a powerful approach, where whatever a product one is working on, if you start with the thing, do the best one you can anywhere in the world. Relax all cost constraints, do the best one. What would go into it? And if you actually put that together and build it, then you probably will learn, as we did, that, okay, so you can't really do all of these things, but you can do many of them in the products that you go out and sell. So that's one example. I'll give you another much more specific example, which is a few years ago, maybe about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we ran a program where we systematically applied Jim's Good Products book, chapter by chapter, to all our existing projects. It's actually something we should keep doing. And we had, I think there were about 10 projects that teams were put together that worked on 10 different projects. The team that won, we set this up as a competition. The team that won the competition was the youngest team. It was the average experience of the team was 2 years, and the and they were just this hugely enthusiastic young team that followed the textbook. Literally, they followed the book as a textbook, and they applied it systematically to each principle, to each step along the way. And they came up with a product. It was a condensate return pump, which is it's a very industrial product. Yeah. And they came up with something that looked like a rocket. So we call it the flash jet pump. And to give you an idea of what's happened with that product, when we started selling the product, one of the first customers of the product was a small chemical plant just outside Surat making dye stuff. And this one product was installed on the shop floor, and we had some of our people there, and the owner of the plant was taking a friend of his around at that time, and he asked what it was, and he was told, and he said, well, install it on all the other machines. And he didn't really know what the product did, how good it was, but it just looked so spectacular that, and actually it's a product that's become, we're selling about 4 times what we had expected to sell of the product. And we're selling them now in 15 different countries around the world. And it's been hugely successful because we applied each of these principles. We said, what should a condensate pump symbolize? How should it appeal to the emotions? How do you make it look well crafted? What is the emotional response you want to see? So it's possible to do with products that are very that you would think don't lend themselves to a huge design influence. We find it very productive, and I wish we would do this very systematically on every project that we undertake, because it's been so successful.
Yeah, I think that's a real feather in the cap where design is concerned, where you've actually meticulously re-engineered design in all its principles. I also feel that that's one way that you have worked is inside out, and that's something that most industrial products need to work in inside out rather than just the beautification. So kudos to that young team that actually had that actually stepped out from their box and did this. With that, I think your company is apparently the great place to work for several years. And I believe when I was working in the area of bringing in design thinking into management and into engineering, I really feel that to be consistent, it's not about one project that you have illustrated or two, it's within the culture. So many times when I consult with companies, they say, yeah, we can do this and we can do these workshops, but how do you bring it into the fabric of the culture where appraisals are done? Are you rewarding people with great ideas? Now, what kind of, if you can, shed light on this, I'm sure there are companies that can pick up from what has worked for you.
So, whatever you put together has to be consistent with the culture in the company.
Yeah.
In our organization, we have a culture that is, I think, very equitable. So we do not have huge rewards for doing, for example, we have a pretty active suggestion scheme, and each individual in the suggestion scheme gets a reward, but the reward is a small reward, and it's meant as a token reward. It's meant to be a signal, but it's not meant to in itself be hugely. It's not meant. The reward is not meant to be the reason why the person comes up with the idea.
Right.
And the same for innovation. The way that we would want it to be embedded in the company is that innovation is a part of what you're expected to do as you do your daily job, whatever that daily job is, whether it's in R&D or whether it's in production or whether it's in sales or whether it's in finance. Bring new thinking, bring new approaches, to how you do your daily job. So how do you create that expectation of innovation? And how do you then recognize it? And if one can create a system where people are expected to be innovative, to do good design as a part of their daily jobs, and that expectation is quite embedded, not just coming from one or two people, but from the wider ecosystem, then I think you're really there. Now, if you have a culture in the company which is very cutthroat and very competitive, then probably rewards will work much better because you're then rewarding you're doing, you've got a practice that is consistent with the way in which that company operates. Right. We're not that kind of company. We're much more collegial and much more community oriented. And so we've consciously chosen not to have big rewards for doing the right thing. We expect everyone to.
Yeah, that's in sync with what your culture is, and it's just probably a motivator to say that if he can do it, so can you, rather than saying that should be the reason you do. And I guess what I liked about your answer was that it's in a context. So what you do to build capabilities and rewards should be in a context, very much like what design is and should be. Let's move a little bit from person to company to society that we are in, right? And you mentioned beautification of spaces. And I remember my trip to Jaisalmer, and I said, wow, this is one place that the color and the architecture design of the buildings are kind of in sync, and it resonated a very calm feeling, especially for me as a designer. It was not an eyesore, right? And I think beautification of spaces that we see today in Bombay, at least under the flyovers, the water edges, railway station, yeah, it is a step forward. I'm not undermining anything, but when you're looking at the spaces that you're talking about, you're looking at congenital spaces that people come together, understand spaces. And again, we can draw out from our traditional space design, where we used materials that were there from that region. Or what do we want to do? Like if it's a temple, then it's about praying, and where do we pray, and how should it be? So is it what would your recommendation be to a societal approach to integrate design? More than design, actually a design mindset. So not spitting out on the roads is not a behavioral change. It's a design mindset. You're creating a mess in the design that was created by somebody else, So I think I just wanted to know, with your years of experience in the kind of design curiosity that you've been having, what would you recommend for people around?
So, I think they're layers. So there's a basic layer, you mentioned, if you don't want people to spit, etc. You want people to treat their surroundings with respect and keep them clean. There used to be a theory in social science, I think it's called the broken window theory or something, right. Which sort of says that, if you have broken windows in a building, the chances are that it will get burgled more because people feel that there's no one that really cares about it, and so you destroy it, you do more with it. But if you have something that is very clean, then people look after it better because they want to keep it better. So I think that's a base level, that you try to make things as neat and clean as you possibly can, such that people choose to and want to respect what it is they're interacting with and dealing with. But it has to go much further. So, for example, one of the countries with one of the world's great aesthetic traditions is Italy, right? And if you talk to an Italian about design, they will give you these poetic descriptions of the light and how it shines and how it shines off buildings and the mountains and all of that. and and the green that you have in Tuscany you don't have anywhere else, and so on. So you get all of this stuff. So it's all around you, and it's been absorbed by people, and it's very, very deeply rooted. Now, we're not Italian, right? But we need to achieve the same kind of aesthetic sense. How do we do that? We will have to work at it very systematically and consciously, probably for many, many years before it gets as deeply rooted. I think until it is deeply rooted, you'll simply need to work on building standards, work on urban spaces, because that's the most obvious thing that conveys design and aesthetics to people. It's where they live and what they see on the road outside. And I think we'll have to work at it for a long time. And it starts off with really creating really good public spaces. I'll give you an example from recent years. If you take the riverfront development project in Ahmedabad, I'm a big fan of it, because if you look at what there was earlier, I mean, earlier the riverfront was well, it was a dirty area that people didn't go to. And I mean, I remember I used to stay in a hotel when I used to go to Ahmedabad, where the window looked out on the river, and you didn't particularly want to look out on the river at that time. It has today become, I'd say, the center of Ahmedabad social life, because the way in which the whole project has been executed, it's a very pleasant place for people to go in the evenings, to go for walks in the at least pre-COVID days, in the along the river, in the parks on either side of the river, and the whole place has become a destination, a public destination for people to go to. Compare that with other cities where are the places that people go in the evening. You'll find that in almost any city in the country, we have it in Pune, we have it, you go to Indore, you'll see it, etc. It's a particular street where you have a bunch of food stalls that come up, the tables start taking over the road, and it becomes a place that attracts people, right? I think we need to do this more systematically and consciously, and give our people some place where they can actually go and mix one with the other that's pleasant and aesthetic, and gives them an experience that enhances their sense of their sense of beauty, and their sense of what good artifacts should be, and not just let them kind of create those public spaces for themselves as a jumble on the street. So I think we can do a lot better with our urban planning as the first step. That urban planning needs to show up in clear building standards, but then maybe a peer-reviewed design process which needs to get cleared as you create some of these spaces, and then you consciously and systematically create public spaces in every significant town in the country, which you set aside as places that people can actually go to, but not run by the government. Because if you had to pick, a visit that I made to Berlin many years ago, soon after the fall of the Berlin Wall. If you went into East Berlin, you would look at some constructions, and it says to you, "I was built by the public sector." And you see that in our country too. You see this in public housing. You see this in unfortunately, go to the Scopes complex in Delhi. It's architecturally attractive, but go inside. Go into South Block, go into North Block. Even South Block's better, and go into North Block. These are magnificent buildings which we mess around with wires and extra offices and all kinds of things. And unless we treat our surroundings with respect, then to say, okay, now, never mind what you're seeing with your eyes, go away and have a great aesthetic sense. It doesn't work that way. So I think we have to work at our surroundings systematically, deliberately, expecting better in all of what we provide people to interact with.
What
That went much beyond what you intended.
No, I think what I hear from here is very interesting. What you're saying is we don't look at one intervention, but actually we are looking at a more holistic intervention. So it's about what we feel about it. Given that India is fighting poverty battles yet, the concept of enjoying the space rather than using and the space, that's the difference. If you go to Germany or if you go even to Singapore, you would use that space and enjoy it and have a calm moment on the riverside, right? But you don't do that here. We have the concept of using a space. I think fundamentally, if we probably change that along with the points that you've made, I think we will be able to get somewhere.
See, but the riverfront project paid for itself.
Yes.
It was financed in a very imaginative way, where as a result of building the walls and channeling the river, a lot of very valuable city center real estate was recovered, and some of it was commercialized, some of it was turned over to public use, and it ended up being a project that I think was actually, I don't know what the final numbers were, maybe Pradeep does, but it was supposed to pay for itself, and the economics were pretty attractive. So I think it's possible to do, even in our country, with all of our poverty, it's still possible to do.
When you look at design holistically.
Yes.
That's
exactly.
what I was drawing from. It's not about. So I think we have a way ahead. But like you said, I mean, just imagining today, like we're fighting this COVID for what, 1.5 years now. I mean, with CII and other sectors that you're working on, organization, what would be a survival mantra you can give for the startup and SMEs, given that design or design thinking mindset would be some lens that they can use? I mean, is there some mantra like that in your mind?
I mean, it's I agree. I mean, it's, what can you advise people who are really struggling in the present time? I mean, the obvious, beyond the obvious, which is to really stay safe and healthy as the first priority. But if you're really trying to do something in the company in the current times that's successful, I guess I would start with, what are the unmet needs? What are the unmet needs in what we see around us? I'll give you an example from a company. I'm on the board of a clothing company called Zodiac, and Zodiac's best known for its shirts. And one of the things that they've launched recently is something called shurtas, because they say that people are spending all their time working from home. So you want something that is more comfortable to wear. It doesn't matter what you're wearing below the waist. What matters is what you're wearing above the waist, because that's all you see online. So that's the need that they've tried to address by coming up with a shirt that's not quite a shirt and not quite a kurta. It's somehow a combination. I mean, it's early days to see how successful it will be, but I think it's a great example of trying to meet a specific need that people have here and now in this pandemic. Many companies have, I think, very systematically focused in the current times on issues relating to hygiene, because not only do you need to be more hygienic, one's sensitivity to hygiene is hugely elevated as a result of the pandemic, and so I think it's we're seeing many companies come out with not just hand sanitizers, but a range of cleaning aids, cleaning tools for homes that I think are doing very well. And together with this, many companies, I think, are also talking about wellness products. So that how do you actually how do you come up with things which appeal to people's sense of wellness, of what will enable them to boost immunity and all of and live a better and healthier life. So I mean, those are the kinds of specific needs, I think, coming out of the way in which we've all been living for these last 15 months that I think we can adopt. Having said all that, I certainly look forward to being able to go back to a life where one can move around and interact and meet people to a much greater extent than we do now, and with everything that flows with that, including in the design sense.
Yeah, what I take away, thank you so much. I think what I take away is basically being agile, right? Being here and now, and quickly reimagine what your service offering or product offering is in your world, instead of working towards what you think may or may not push today. When you look at is, we've been last 5 or maybe than that have been pushed on to saying made in India, Atmanirbhar. But what I've seen when I started the school is that a lot of R&D companies, like innovation of multinational companies which are headquartered in US or even in Europe, have started center of excellence, have started innovation centers in India. So what's your view about Made in India and Atmanirbhar? Can we build more than manufacturing capabilities?
So, so first of all, we can definitely build much more than manufacturing capability. We can definitely build much more than manufacturing capability. So I'm a big believer in Made in India. I'm not a big believer in self-reliance as a way of developing better products for the world. I think the world of products, the world of design, the world of R&D is an international world. We need to be able to compete effectively with the best that is being developed anywhere. And that requires that we be completely open to the best that is available everywhere. So we need to be open to the best technology from everywhere in the world, the best designers from everywhere in the world, the best engineers from everywhere in the world, and we need to bring it all together and then make the end product in India. That's the way in which we should actually go about it, if you ask me. So I think we can be very focused on building highly successful enterprises here at home in India. But to do so, we need to be completely open in our mindsets, welcoming of input and technologies and ideas from wherever in the world they come, and then seamlessly take those ideas and integrate them into something that is simply better than what anyone else does.
That's another way to go on. And also, I think as designers or a design mindset, we say that it's not about what you can do in the small scope of your world, but sometimes when you see things, the neutrons in the way you think are actually challenged, because then you're setting off. It's almost like a tennis ball, it sets off somewhere, hits somewhere, and propagates another action. And that action or that resultant will be definitely better than what you're doing in your own pond. With that, I've been toying with this concept of design and what design entails as such. I know that you've been advocating that designers should be increasing in number, but what should design be? So design from hardcore industrial engineering to products to services. What's your view on policy as a design output, right? And a system design where you're looking at, say, even the metro in Bombay. I mean, it's an ecosystem, and system design thinking that designers are really good at actually would do better to have an effect, which you're saying, which is more inside out. So do you see India as growing in talent? You want to grow at that in talent, and what should design then encompass?
Well, all of the above. I mean, design needs to be both a much larger enterprise in terms of the number of designers who are doing their stuff, but it also needs to be a much deeper enterprise, in that it needs to be much more embedded in how we do all of our products, how we do all of our services, and how we do all of our utilities, public spaces, the metro, the interaction, etc., that we're doing on a daily basis. A friend of mine, actually an old colleague of mine in Delhi, his daughter graduated in product design, and she then went to work. She works in San Francisco, and when I asked her what she was doing, she says, "I'm working for an insurance company." I said, how come? I mean, what are you as a product designer doing in an insurance company? And she said, well, I'm doing product design. And she actually was given the responsibility of rethinking the claims process from the user perspective. And that involves everything from the actual interface with the consumer right through to the back end of how fast a claim could actually be settled. And could they get the claim settled within, they set a target of a minute, because that would then be a way of addressing true customer needs. So design really has potential to apply in every possible area. Now, for that to happen, we need many more designers. Pradyumna has been bored out of his mind by the number of times I've asked him, so how many designers do we produce versus South Korea produce versus China produce? But he'll give you these numbers. The numbers are very impressive in China and in South Korea in terms of how many designers get produced year on year on year. And it needs to be a much bigger enterprise for us. So one of a sort of pet project, which we're trying to do something about in CII now, is that, we produce huge numbers of engineers every year, over 1 million engineers every year. We produce it's a growing number of designers every year, but it's tiny relative to the number of engineers we produce every year. We produce maybe 20,000 designers a year, counting all the new design programs that have come up around the country. So, 20,000 designers, over 1 million engineers. How do we actually give enough of our engineers a sense and appreciation of design? If we can do that, if we can somehow bolt on a minimum set of design principles and understanding to our wider engineering base, then we can really have probably more impact in a shorter period of time than we would otherwise be able to do, and where then the core design professionals are really the anchor of that kind of much wider effort. But I think design needs to scale a lot more in the country. I have a message also for designers, if I may, which is, because I think there'll be lots of designers on here, which is, designers sometimes I worry that, I don't know if this is true of designers worldwide, Srini can tell us, but I worry that in India, designers tend to focus on how they are different to the designer at the next desk instead of what they have in common. And I sometimes worry that we're focusing on the 3% that's different instead of the 97% that's common. Because I think if we focused on the 97% that's common, we would go much further, because we would put all our energy and effort into things that unify us instead of those little differences that we happen to have. And I don't know if it's particularly true of design, and maybe being unfair, but I think actually being more, really looking at the common ground and the things that we all agree with and the things that we are all convinced is the right thing to do, and then just move with those And then after we've done all those, then we'll worry about the things that we disagree on and argue about them later. So if I had to provide a message to designers, that would be one of them. And the second message, by the way, would be just worry about doing good things. We have many designers that do really great work, and just learn from them and do great things. And design, as we all know, is hard work. It involves a lot of trial and error. It involves bringing together many different senses, many different backgrounds, and turning them all into something that is quite unique. And we have to just keep working at it until we get it right and do something that is really first rate. So be open to influences everywhere, from everywhere, and just keep trying to have an impact on your companies, on your environment, on the housing society that you're in, on your own house, and hopefully even on what's outside your gate.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think we've talked about many points that we can take home, talking from the skewed ratio to what's product, to engineering, to experience, to emotion, to spaces that we can build holistically, to the message that you just gave, which is really important, because today's time is about collaborative creativity. And I remember attending a seminar on future of design education with Pradyumna here, and I think that's where we also need to innovate ourselves to see that what can we do to be collaborative with our creativity, and actually walk ahead. And I know we have to play the catch-up game where design is concerned, like the design mindset, the sensibility, being responsible for our surroundings. But what the environment is doing with us is we have to probably rush and look at sustainability. What technology is doing with us, we have to look at ethics and what the breach of privacy that is happening, and most of all, inclusivity in design, right? Whether it's racial, whether it's challenges of humanity, and what we can do that. And yesterday, actually, I was looking at the the CII conference, and it's also online, but it was inclusive, with the speaker talking with another person actually doing the sign language, and the text being read out. So, it's a small example of how inclusivity can be built in just in the interface that we are talking into. And there's definitely lots to do. Designers are always supposed to be rangers. I remember when I passed out of IDC, they said, change is what you will do, and you have to be that person who can calculate risks before you change the world. I think it's the most exciting time for designers with all this, and with proponents as you, I think, and CII now that even Pradyumna is, spearheading a lot of design initiative. We'll be able to create design mindsets, if not bring in the numbers of designers in the foray. I think with that said, I wanted to say a big thank you to CII for this initiative. I think we just have to keep sensitizing people on what we can do, and design is exactly, actually that's the definition I use every time somebody asks me about design. Design is a deliberate act for a certain intended action, and if we can just propagate that mindset around with CII, with its influence on SMEs down the line, I think we can make a difference in closing years. And thank you so much, all of you, for being a part of this and giving me a chance to actually have it was very intriguing conversation with Dr. Forbes. I will hand over my virtual stage to somebody who's coming next, and hope to see you again for more design talks. So over to you. I think, Pooja, would you like to take it over?
Yes. Thank you, Professor Manisha. I would say thank you very much, Dr. Forbes and Professor Manisha, for such an interactive and such a session which has been, giving us a lot of takeaways from here. I would now like to invite Professor Vyas, Senior Advisor, CII, and Board Member, World Design Organization, to give his concluding remarks, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Pooja. In fact, Manisha has concluded it so well, there is hardly anything to say. But I would like to actually extend my thanks to Srini, my friend, who's, I think it's middle of night, and he's so supportive. And this initiative, actually, Design Talk, which World Design Organization is supporting, and I must say that during his presidentship, and with CII, because he has brought the General Assembly to Hyderabad, and we feel very nice that it was a CII platform. And now there is a lot of global activities which are happening, and he's always there, even if it is middle of the night. Thank you, Srini. That really encourages us to do things. And I must say that I was so glued up. I have spent so much of time with Dr. Forbes, maybe 7-8 years in NID, in the India Design Council, and governing body was a chairman of our NID governing council, almost for close to a decade. My directorship and his thing went almost. But today I was totally glued that, the person who's coming from hardcore engineering background, and where there is a mindset in industry also about the what you call aspect of design, or how the design is considered. And so many years ago, he could understand that even in hardcore engineering, manufacturing industry, the design plays very, very important role. I have gone through a tremendous frustrating situation dealing with DRDO and CSIR and all at NID, that they are coming in a very high-tech product with a complete prototype, and they come to NID and they will say that, oh, we have finished all our engineering and technology work, and now you please do beautification. And it becomes so difficult, it's like everything you have, and you just want us to make a cover or case or something like that. And it was really hard nut to crack that design is not just a beautification, it's much deeper than that, what Dr. Forbes was talking about. It was really heartening to see that the person who is dealing with such engineering and manufacturing side has really spearheaded, and I would say that the design fraternity must thank him, that how he has really brought up the design profession in this country and started talking in hardcore engineering about the systems thinking, about the consciousness, about the human center. Usually engineering firms, people don't talk all these words which he was talking about: product, service, and systems. So audience, which I want to actually communicate, that design is much deeper than just talking about beautification, or meaning even very eminent person who visited NID and say, oh, NID, you do so many things. I thought it's only textile design and print design, something like that. Even after 60 years of existence, such things comes up. I think design, as we discussed, yes, it was during the second industrial revolution, where it was more on a linear economy. It was based in that you make it, use it, and then dump it. And a lot of issues with the sustainability aspect, which has come in, sustainable development goal, which Srini is talking about, Dr. Forbes have talked about, Manisha has touched upon. And I think there is a shift in gear about the design thinking and design approach. And eventually the pandemic has also brought a newer focus, that how we can adapt in situations which are so difficult. And I always feel about that Zoom was there, WebEx was there, we were not using, and suddenly this whole thing has come upon us. We adapted technology very. So this nature of adapting change, I think somewhere we have to learn from this even pandemic to see that how we continuously adapt, change, innovate, and move on. And also behavior aspect Manisha touched upon, I felt, which is very, very important, that how design can modify the behavior. And Dr. Forbes talked about the riverfront project. I must say that design can modify the behavior. Even in Indore, the Clean Indore, it has got award for 2-3 years. And somehow the municipal corporation have worked out on strategies where they could modify the behavior. Yes, it is possible that the social behavior can be changed. So eventually, I would say that now the way this whole thing which is progressing, I think the design for the business, certainly it makes a great sense that good design is good business, but there is an angle of humanity, there is an angle of inclusiveness, there is an angle of dignity, there is an angle of aging population. There is also, Dr. Forbes talked about that, how responsible our decisions could be, and how anything we do, whether we are considering the sustainable or whether we are looking into people, profit and planet together or not, or how we are balancing between the economy and the sustainability. So a lot of interesting things. In fact, I was just feeling like that this conversation must go on and on, but it is, I'm sure it is just a start. It is the first one, and we are going to a lot of insight. And Pooja, I say that this is going to be a good video to store and then circulate among people, because a lot of things which have come in, and the craft and technology, what a lovely fusion which we talked about, because after all, the craft tradition has gone for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it has survived because it was following the natural ecosystem. And now learning from that, how we can really bring in into the contemporary and modern context and take it forward. So I would like to again thank Srini for supporting all the time this initiative. I know the design talk which you're joining hand with CII, our CII team, which is working very hard to really develop this vertical. And I must say that Dr. Forbes is behind us to see that this design vertical in CII really take a lead, and we make a very strong impact. Also, he talked about impact, and I see that the impact is the social impact, the environmental impact, and all those which he talked about. And he has a vision which we would like to carry forward in CII of the design connectivity with the industry. Dr. Ashish, he's really innovation and technology, which he is spearheading again. So we have a small team at CII, but we have a very strong mentoring from Dr. Forbes. So I'm sure industry is going to get tremendous benefit, and including, as Manisha mentioned, about the policy framework. We are working, Manisha, in CII, that reviving the design policy. So for social good, for economic good, and sustainability. So thank you once again. It was indeed pleasure having you all. And this is the first talk, very important talk in the series, and we'll continue. And I would also like to thank Manisha for supporting from NMIMS this whole initiative. So it really means a lot, because institutions are coming forward with CII and with WDO. So taking design promotion agenda forward. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. If I can jump in, Srini and WDO itself is an illustration of evolvement of design, from industrial design to a world design organization. The bandwidth that they have covered, I think hats off to you. And I look forward to more such initiatives from you, Srini. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all the dignitaries present with us.
Thank you, everybody, from my side also. I would just like to say that today is a very auspicious day. We are having Akshay Tritiya today. Today is the Eid festival, and it was a great start of this initiative. I'm sure all the audience would have really got a lot of learnings from it. I can see a number of questions on the chat window. We will respond to them, taking guidance from Dr. Forbes on them. And thank you, Dr. Forbes. It was and Dr. Manisha, Professor Vyas, Srini, everybody, thank you. One thing, sir, which I promise you, is that this session will be just a stepping stones towards much bigger things on the design that we are building up. Eventually, we will work towards increasing competitiveness of India in the design sector. We will ensure that this 3% thing goes much beyond this level, and we are at par with the number of designers that China and Korea are coming up with. We will match up your expectations, sir. We'll work towards that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Forbes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Srini.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Srini. Thanks for joining at such a crazy time.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.